Fuck you, everybody else. Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new Business Blaze. It's your boy with the Blaze. My name is Simon. In these videos, what we do, Danny writes us a script, I read it, Sam adds some memes, and people are very excited because every video I've started thanking Sam. It's because he made an official complaint with HR. That's untrue, we don't have an HR department. Oh god, I can imagine working for a big company. I would hate that shit because I'd make some inappropriate joke and then I get fired. What are we talking about today? The most expensive mistakes ever made, part 2, because as you guys know, I'm a massive fan of lazy content where it's like, oh look, that video did really well. Let's make a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 17 because lazy content. Danny writes us something. I already said that. Let's get on with it. Oh, by the way, you see this glorious t-shirt I'm wearing? Bum, bum, bum. You can purchase this at purchthemerch.co. That is a P-U-R-C-H, as in purchase the merch, because someone actually bought Purch the Merch, P-E-R-C-H, .co, and it just goes to a Rickroll, so thank you. Purch the Merch, P-U. If you want to get Rickrolled, PE. So someone is literally spending like 25 euros a year just to troll me. Absolute legend. There are many ancient... Also, what does this have to do with business? I don't know, every time I make a video that's not really about business, no one cares. I mean, you don't care that it's not about business. Everyone cares about the Blaze, because it's the best. There are many ancient mysteries and riddles from the dawn of time which are still baffling the most brilliant minds of today. What was the fate of the Ark of the Covenant? Where is Cleopatra's tomb? How much is a season ticket for the Hanging Gardens of Babylon? Oh, the questions. Then there are some recent conundrums which are even more puzzling. Why would someone who just won a £64 million jackpot on the lottery never bother handing in the ticket? Well, I'm assuming because they lost it, not because they were like, oh yeah, I just don't want it. I'm already rich. Even rich people would take £64 million.
Hello, I like money.
Incredibly, this did actually happen back in 2012. It's not incredible. Surely people lose tickets all the time. I've lost lottery tickets. That's a joke. I don't play the lottery because I'm not an idiot. After a Euro Millions lottery draw held in Paris, the actual... Wait, how can a Euro Millions lottery draw be held? I guess they could draw it in Paris. But it's Euro Millions. It's literally for the whole of Europe. The actual jackpot prize was worth about £127 million in total, but the money was shared between 2 winning tickets. That is absurd. Yeah, lottery prizes got insane, and unlike in America, where it's like, yeah, the lottery prize is $7 billion. But after we've done the payment thing, where it's like, yeah, you could choose like a yearly annuity or get a lump sum. Oh, how much is the lump sum? I mean, if I won $3 billion, it's probably like 2.8, right? And they're like, no, it's actually $40 million. And it's like, and then once you pay taxes, it's like $4 million. And you're like, what the fuck, lottery? Whereas in Europe, if you win £127 million, there's no annuity bullshit, you get a check, and you don't have to pay taxes on it. At least, it might be different in other European countries. In the UK, again, not an accountant, this is not legal advice, but I'm fairly certain there's no tax on lottery winnings, so you get to keep it all. It should still be abolished. And what the fuck? Why aren't they taxing that? Of all the things that should be taxed, it's like, oh yeah, let's just absolutely people who work hard, but if someone wins the lottery, let's not tax that at all because clearly they put in the effort. Me, right? One of the tickets belonged to a player in Belgium who was fairly quick off the mark to claim half of the jackpot. What a surprise. But the other ticket was never redeemed. But it was purchased in a shop in Hertfordshire in the UK. But despite high-profile appeals and billboard campaigns, the winner failed to come forward before the one who's paying for these billboards. Who's like, hey, where's that lottery winner who won the thing? Where is he? Come on. If I was the lottery, I'd be like, f***ing keep quiet, mate. We get to keep all the money if no one claims it. The winner failed to come forward before the 180-day time limit, and the identity of them remains as elusive as the location of the lost tomb of Alexander the Great. 180, can you imagine if you play the lottery, then you're involved in like a car accident, you get into a coma and you wake up like 7 months later and you're like, no! First the coma and then this. Of course, the £64 million question is what exactly happened here. Maybe the winner was initially excited about the prospect of winning £127 million, but then couldn't be bothered to claim it when he realised he had to share it with some Belgian prick. Maybe he got struck by lightning and dropped dead before he could claim his winnings, although the odds of getting struck by lightning and winning the lottery in the same week must almost be as high as throwing 154 consecutive winning rolls at the craps table. Original Business Blaze legend joke right there. Thank you. If you got that joke, smash the like button below. If you didn't get that joke, go back and watch all of my videos because I like sweet watch time, and sweet watch time leads to money for Simon. The more likely scenario is that he or she wasn't even aware that they'd won. What a surprise. They'd just shoved it in their coat pocket as if it was a Big Mac from McDonald's that they'd planned to eat 21 years later and completely forgotten about. In other words, they'd made a very simple mistake which had cost them an absolute fortune and resulted in the biggest unclaimed jackpot in history. And it's often the case that the simplest oversights, screw-ups and bungles can prove to be the most expensive in the long term. I almost thought I'd moved on to a new Business Blaze script there, because Danny has decided to use exactly the same font for headings as subheadings. Thanks, Danny. It seems quick, and I know in the future Danny will write in a script being like Simon was a dick about my subheads. So just one page will be the heading. Like, why am I such a knob? Google could have been more exciting. I guess there's a joke there that I'm not getting. It seems quite strange now to look back and recall a time when Google wasn't around and the early internet adopters had to use other search engines to find the answers to their burning questions. Like Ask Jeeves, Yahoo. It was all a bit shit. When I first got hooked up to the internet, I remember clearly that nearly everyone in the UK was using Ask Jeeves, thanks partly to the popular TV commercials of the time. I'm not sure we all completely grasped the concept of search engines back then, or even recognized the terms, which is why we had to have a website where it was like a picture of a butler, and you had to ask him a question. And also, it was not efficient to ask him a question. You were like, because I remember when Google came out and you could use Google or Ask Jeeves, and I was like, well, I get with Ask Jeeves because I can ask him a question. And no, it was just worse than, like, you can ask Google a question. I mean, it's just not the right way to use a search engine, is it? Unless you're trying to find something on Yahoo Answers. And, well, no one's trying to do that because it's Yahoo Answers. I'd love to do a video about Yahoo Answers. It's got nothing to do with Business Blaze, but that would be a joyous reaction video. The character of Jeeves was just presented to internet novices as a magic butler who knew everything. I don't think everyone grasped the concept of the keywords either. A lot of people felt compelled to type in a complete and perfectly punctuated sentence for every query, just as they were advised to in the TV commercials. Otherwise, they imagined that poor Jeeves wouldn't understand what they were trying to say. I should read these ahead of time because, otherwise they're just twice as long as Danny explains what I've explained. Perhaps one of the forgotten search engines and web portals of the 1990s belonged to Excite. It's certainly not a platform that I ever remember, despite the fact that by the end of the decade it was second only to Yahoo in terms of search traffic. I think I remember Excite. I don't think I ever used it. I definitely used Yahoo was my big one before Google, but honestly, Google was right there. I mean, when I started really getting online. Back in 1997, two graduate students named Larry Page and Sergey Brin were working on a little search engine side project, which was initially called Backrub, and they were keen to make a few quid by flogging it to a major company. Also, this is my business daddy, because if you don't know, YouTube is owned by Google. Also, fascinatingly, you probably know the famous story of Larry and Sergey starting Google in a garage. That garage belongs to Susan Wojcicki, who is now the CEO of YouTube, which I thought was interesting. They approached Excite with an offer to sell this technology to them for $1 million. Excite politely refused. Following further negotiations, the price was dropped to $750,000. But still, this wasn't good enough for Excite, and they declined again. Although the problem is, right, you're like, oh yeah, Excite really missed a trick. And I'm like, well, no, if Excite had bought Google, they'd probably just make it shit, and Google wouldn't be what it is today. So it's not like they missed out on like $1 trillion opportunity, or however much Google is worth. I'm sure it's a lot. Hey Siri, how much is Google worth? I'm here. Yeah, I know you're there. How much is Google worth? Siri?
You're fired.
The decision is often wrongly attributed to George Bell's alleged belief that Backrub, soon to be rechristened Google, actually worked a bit too well and provided relevant search results so quickly that users wouldn't hang around long enough on the Excite website, and potential revenue would be lost. Yeah. Not putting your customers first. When there's a competitor who does exactly that, that sounds like a solid business plan. George Bell ends. George Bell denies this, allegedly, and claims that he would always have been interested in pursuing the best possible technology, even if it meant reshaping the business model. His real problem with the deal was that Larry and Sergey were adamant that they would only come and work for Excite if they ripped out their existing technology and replaced it with all the Google stuff. Which would have been smart! Even though the deal on paper was meant to represent Excite's acquisition of Google, it fell to George Bell that Google was trying to take over Excite and call the shots. Again, that would have been a good call! Maybe it would have been a small price to pay. You don't need me to tell you how successful Google became. In contrast, Excite ended up getting acquired by none other than Ask Jeeves. Really? In 2004. Although by this time the Magic Butler had retired from service and the platform had just been renamed simply Ask.com. It's not all bad news though. Excite is currently the 3,616th most visited website in the world. In your face, Google. Yeah, that's sad. Where does what? I mean, Excite's gone. What does Ask do? Is that really a thing? Ask.com. Whoever goes here, whoever uses this. Oh, it does exist. Take me to the UK website. I'm gonna search for myself. I'm not autofilling, which is, you know, sad, bad for my ego. Simon at Amazon.de. Low prices on Simon. Yeah, that's what I was looking for, Ask. Sausage fingers in Tokyo. We're moving on to another subhead, which is the same format as the head. I'm not ashamed to admit that the odd typo has probably slipped into Business Blaze scripts from time to time. That's okay, Danny. It's not like people are reading it except for me. At best, it may seem as if I accidentally implied that the Cod of Good Hope is slightly bigger than it actually is. Ba-da-bum-bum. At worst, it might mean that I accidentally write an entire script about communism instead of whatever the video is supposed to be about. Yeah, the other day we were making a video, we're like 15 minutes in, and I'm like, Danny, we're just talking about communism again. Why? But everyone keeps watching. The watch percentage on this channel is absurdly high for it just being mostly waffle, and occasionally input from Danny. There aren't too many far-reaching consequences from this. Yeah, Danny. How'd you end up in the basement, mate? However, spare a thought for the poor broker working at the Japanese company Mizuho Securities, who had intended to sell a share in the manpower recruitment firm JCOM. His simple job had been to sell a single share in JCOM on the Tokyo Stock Exchange for 610,000 yen, equivalent to $5,000 in 2005 when the trade was listed. However, his clumsy figure instead meant that he got it the wrong way around and ended up selling 610,000 shares in the company for just 1 yen, or less than a penny each. Oh my god, can't you just take that back?
And it's gone.
I have to say that, you know, I invest in mostly like index funds and ETFs because I don't play the market because I'm an idiot. I mean, I don't think people who play the market are non-idiots. I just think I'm too much of an idiot to figure out how to make money at that. So I just invest in index funds. But every time I'm making an order, I'm extremely careful because I'm like, what if I enter the wrong thing? It's like, that would be bad. Anyway, a huge controversy erupted over how the trade was even allowed to get through the system without ringing any alarm bells, which ultimately led to the resignation of the chief executive of the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Oh my god, along with 2 other senior executives. It does say, well, it is a pretty major error. Mizuho Securities did eventually manage to buy back the shares at a much higher price, with a total cost of $347 million being shared between the company and the exchange. Dude, so you made basically $1/3 billion mistake. Oh my god. It's not clear what happened to the unnamed employee, but you suspect that he wasn't invited to the Christmas party that year. But whoever bought all those shares is a legend. It's like, you can imagine just being like on there, it's like, wow, that seems cheap. Boom! And you've got like maybe a controlling share in a giant corporation. Holy shit. But he should have at least received a Christmas card from a 27-year-old man called Takashi Kotagawa, who was listed as unemployed at the time, yet he somehow managed to rack up losses of $800,000 a day on the stock exchange and was reportedly close to despair. When the typo trade first listed, he was quick to swoop in during happy hour on the Tokyo Stock Exchange and made around $16 million from the deal of a lifetime. I'm glad we got to hear about him. What a legend. He should have bought more though. He should have bought 20 times as much and snapped it all up. Epic car crash. On paper at least, the proposed merger between Daimler-Benz and Chrysler looked like a match made in automobile heaven. What's up with TV shows? Like I'm watching this show on Netflix called These Aliens Come, they fuck everything up, they build walls around cities. It's not called Community. That's another very different TV show. It doesn't matter. It's with the guy from Lost, the woman from Prison Break, the guy from House, who wasn't Hugh Laurie, and it's pretty good. I like how I can remember every detail about this show except for his fucking name. And all of the cars in that show, they have their badges removed, but so it's blatantly obvious. Like the guy's driving around a car and it's like, well, that's clearly a Ford. And you can just see on the steering wheel where the Ford logo should be, there's a giant hole where the logo's just been plucked off. And I'm like, I get that they can't show brands on screen because I've done stuff for like companies and stuff. I'd be like, yeah, can you make sure you don't wear any branded clothes? And I'm like, please, I only wear my own merch. And they're like, don't show any brands. But it does, you're watching it. And I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake, I was really enjoying this. And now I'm just totally pulled out thinking about the fact that there's a giant hole in the middle of his steering wheel. It's dumb. What are we talking about? But bearing in mind that one interpretation of a transcendental afterlife for motor vehicles is probably a scrapyard, then maybe automobile heaven is exactly where the deal ended up. But a bum bum. Daimler was the German manufacturer of luxury high-end cars, most notably the Mercedes-Benz, aimed largely at very rich Europeans. I don't think you have to be very rich. Am I out of touch? You definitely don't have to be very rich to have a Mercedes. That same tractor went by. Do you remember a few videos ago I was like, a tractor just drove past my window on Business Blaze. I figured out what it was. It's a street cleaner and it's just got these giant tractor wheels. There you go. Mystery solved. For anyone who doesn't watch regularly, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Welcome to Business Blaze. That happens. I roam while I blaze. Oh my god, I'm so confused. Some people in the comments are like, oh, this is so rambly. And I'm like, yeah, it is. I don't know what to say. I usually say, like, I've got 7 other channels where I don't ramble. In contrast, Chrysler were famous for selling lower-end, reliable family cars to everyday Americans. I rented a Chrysler when I went to America once. I have to say, it was allegedly a bit of a piece of shit that used a lot of petrol. But fortunately, petrol in America is in America is basically free. So it's like, whatever. And don't complain, Californians, because I was in California and I still thought it was cheap. Come to Europe and see what you make of our prices. So the idea behind the merger was that Daimler could increase its own market share in the US, improve the quality of Chrysler vehicles, and sell these new vehicles to Europe for the first time. Together, Daimler would be seen as the luxury brand, while Chrysler would be the affordable brand of a new global powerhouse that offered vehicles for everyone. The new company, Daimler Chrysler, was formed in 1998 after Daimler acquired Chrysler for $37 billion. At the time, this was the largest acquisition of a US company by an international buyer in history. The initial signs looked quite promising as the share price soared on the stock exchanges, but things were ultimately destined to freewheel downhill and crash into a big lorry carrying hundreds of live chickens. I'm missing a joke. By the year 2007, Daimler had sold the overwhelming majority of its stake in Chrysler for just $7 billion, resulting in an overall loss of just under $30 billion. Fairly substantially brutal there. That is a lot of money. So, what went wrong? I don't know. It's got to be something about, well, the cheap and expensive vehicles. They just don't play nice together. Well, a US recession in the early noughties certainly didn't help. Despite Chrysler launching a line of new and improved models, the public just didn't seem particularly interested in buying them in any great numbers. By 2006, Chrysler had posted a loss of $1.5 billion, axed 26,000 jobs. I don't know. I should read these with some degree of, sensibleness, rather than, hey, they fired 26,000 people. Woo! They axed 26,000 jobs. And even were pushed out of the big 3 by Toyota. But the main problem seems I do like Toyota. Like, my first car was a Toyota. That thing was fantastic. It broke down once, and it was old, and I didn't drive it very well, didn't look after it. It would go for its MOT, and they'd be like, well, it really needs this, this, and this, and this. And I'm like, will it pass the MOT? And they're like, if you do this. And I'll do that one thing. Don't do anything else. I even had a wing mirror that had got knocked off. And they were like, well, it's going to be like £100 to put on a new wing mirror or whatever. So I just got this epoxy glue and just absolutely just glued it to the side, took it back, and they were like, congratulations, it's passed. But the main problem seems to be the cultural clash between the two companies, who just couldn't seem to agree on quality or technique or sales or anything really. And although the merger was officially meant to be an equal pairing, it soon became clear that Daimler was very much in the driving seat while Chrysler appeared to be locked in the trunk. Also, well, it's not equal when one buys the other, is it? It was originally envisioned that Daimler would provide Chrysler with their high-end expertise, vehicle architecture, and superior components, but in the end, Chrysler was left to flail on its own with little more than a monkey wrench from the Daimler side. What is a monkey wrench? What is a monkey wrench? Oh. It is actually a thing. It exists. It seemed as if Daimler had become almost embarrassed by its new partner and had lost. Wait, which is the nice one? Daimler is the nice one. Yeah, well, you would be too. It'd be like, yeah. Mercedes, not Mercedes. This is Mercedes. Oh, I don't know. Like BMW. Yeah. We bought Lada. Hide them somewhere. Be like, you go to the BMW dealership. It's like a giant BMW sign, and then just tiny little letters underneath. Lada. Hide it in the cupboard. No one wants to see those Ladas. I think someone told me that we mentioned Lada in a previous video. No, it still exists. No one cares. Stop making cars. Chrysler purchased the merch. .co. Chrysler would continue to suffer financial torment in the years to come as it filed for bankruptcy in 2009 and was rescued only by a bailout package from the US government, though the brand still exists today as a subsidiary of Fiat, another company famous for their high-quality cars and definitely not known as Fix It Again Tony. Daimler, of course, is still going well, but I'm sure they'd rather forget this disastrous chunk of their history, which ended up being widely regarded as one of the biggest merger and acquisition mistakes of all time. Sizzling skyscraper. Oh, I know this one. This is the walkie-talkie building that set someone's Jaguar on fire. 20 Fenchurch Street in London is now home to a commercial skyscraper which has been given the nickname the walkie-talkie because of its deeply unusual shape. It's not unusual, it looks like a walkie-talkie. I mean, it's pretty f***ing ugly, to be honest. Allegedly. Although, that's an opinion, I can say that. That building is f***ing ugly. Who designed that shit? Look at the Gherkin, that's a good-looking building. The Shard, great-looking building. St. Paul's f***ing Cathedral, great-looking building. Walkie-talkie building. Although that's quite a generous description of this top-heavy, quite bloated construction which looks almost painfully swollen. Nail on the head! Designed by the Uruguayan architect Rafael Vinoli, the 38-story building cost over £200 million to construct and comes complete with its own 3-floor sky garden, which the developer claims would be the highest public park in London. Well, that's cool. You can actually go up there and enjoy the public park. I like that. I'll do that. It's not really, as there are very tight access restrictions to the Sky Garden. You have to book several days in advance for a very short slot, so it's not like the whole family can spontaneously decide to spend summer afternoon there for a game of frisbee dog. What is frisbee dog? Danny, your hobbies are weird. Although then some people in the comments are like, some of you don't know frisbee dog? You don't know how to play the elephant table? What the fuck? It also looks considerably less impressive than it did in the blueprint designs, which is a shame, as the Sky Garden was apparently one of the key factors in the proposed building being approved in the first place. I hate this bullshit. They'll be like, you present a plan, it's like, hey city, we want, all of these special things and like special allowances and tax breaks and all that bullshit that big things get to do something. And it's like, what will you do in return? Well, we'll build all of this affordable housing, we'll put in this Sky Garden, we'll build a hospital in the basement, and it's going to be open to everyone to enjoy all the time, especially the poor. And then they're like, we didn't end up doing any of that stuff, but thanks for your support, government. And then nothing happens, and no one cares. But there were more pressing problems to worry about. Instead of all of this awesome stuff that they they didn't, I was just making an example. Instead of building a Sky Garden that the people can use, instead they set their cars on fire because fuck you everybody else. In 2004, it was discovered that the south-facing wall of the building, which was covered in reflective glass, was acting as a concave mirror and redirecting the rays of the sun down onto the streets to the south. In fact, this reflection turned out to be 6 times brighter than direct sunlight shining onto the hot concrete below. This really blazed up into a controversy when one poor guy had parked his Jaguar on a street called Eastcheap, returned to his vehicle to find that his rear view mirror and parts of the car's bodywork had actually started to ripple under the intense heat. I've seen pictures of this, it's pretty cool. Poor guy with his Jaguar, but it's pretty good. There were also complaints from nearby shops that their doormats had caught fire, while one UK radio reporter proved a point to his audience when he successfully managed to fry a neck on the scorching street floor. Jesus. The guy with the melting Jaguar received compensation for £946 from the developers, but the cost of permanently fixing the problem with the walkie-talkie came at a much higher price tag, in the millions of pounds. Temporary solutions involved erecting protective... I feel like this guy for £946, that's how, litigation works in the UK. I feel like if this was like in America, it would be like, he got £946 to fix his car and £438 million in punitive damages for mental and physical distress and anguish, and he was very attached to his Jaguar. It had all these memories and legal system and his lawyer would have got a third. Temporary solutions involved erecting protective screening around the streets before a permanent awning could be installed on the south side of the higher floors of the skyscraper. All of this might have been avoided if the designer had been aware of that the UK does sometimes have quite sunny days in the summer, very rarely. In an interview with The Guardian, he noted that, "I didn't realize it was going to be so hot. When I first came to London 3 years ago, it wasn't like this. Now you have all these sunny days." Dude, you're a building designer. It's great. It's great that you came to the city and saw the weather. But when we're designing giant skyscrapers that are like 30 however many floors high, I don't know, maybe a little research would have been good. I'm not saying, to do anything more than open the weather app on your phone or, go onto the Wikipedia page and look at the climate section, just saying. Still, the newly nicknamed Walkie Scorchy or Fry Scraper did go on to pick up an award. It won the 2015 Carbuncle Cup for worst new building in the UK. Yeah, because it sets cars on fire and it looks fucking ugly as sin. Fat French Trains. New section. Last section. Get excited. Finally, the French train company SNFC, sounds like a football club because it ends in FC, was responsible for possibly one of the most embarrassing and costly mistakes of recent years. They shelled out 15 billion euros for a fleet of 2,000 shiny new trains for their lines in Paris and throughout the rest of France. I'm not entirely sure if fleet is the correct collective noun for a group of trains. It could be a roster of trains, or maybe a train of trains would be more appropriate. Alright, Danny, we can go with fleet. But anyway, after SNFC had forked out the money and received the squadron, that's even better, of 2,000 trains, they quickly identified a minor issue. I'm going to guess that it's not a minor issue because we're on the final episode and some final entry, and there have been some fairly major mistakes made so far, billion-dollar mistakes. The new trains were too wide to fit in between the platform of many of the older French stations. How do you make such an error? A spokesman for SNFC confirms that they had discovered this problem a bit late. How many trains? 2,000. 2,000 trains. 2,000 trains. A situation apparently arose when officials had measured the dimensions of the platforms of relatively new French train stations, but had failed to realize the stations, which had been built 50 or more years earlier, had actually less space than between the platforms because the trains were a bit slimmer back in those days. This had turned out to be a pretty expensive schoolboy error, as the long-term solution is to keep the cocktail of 2,000 fat trains and widen the track space of the affected older stations at a cost of 68 million euros. That is absolutely brutal. Still, at least this could have given them an interesting new temporary excuse to add to a list of reasons why your vital train to work has been heavily delayed. I don't know if this is just a British joke, but I imagine it's absolutely even more appropriate in France because, well, it's France. But in the UK, the trains being delayed is like, oh my god, it's just life. It's just like, I think I told the story before where I got stuck on a train overnight in the middle of winter. It was fucking horrible. Leaves on the track. The wrong kind of snow. A carriage has been used as a convenience. Oh, I mean someone took a piss in a carriage. The train is accidentally going backwards. The sun is setting in the driver's eyes. The train is too fat to enter the station. We apologize for the potential 5-year delay. One of the more grim ones is, that's the end today. One of the more grim ones is, they call them, I think, passenger incidents. Basically means they're scraping someone off the tracks. Anyway, on that joyous note, not really. Simon, don't make fun of suicide. I'm not. I'm just sharing a little personal anecdote, and it's called making a joke. This has been Business Blaze. I have been your boy with the blaze. Thank you for watching. Purch the merch. PURCH, themerch.co if you would like to buy the merch. PRCH, themerch.co if you'd like to experience a Rickroll. Thank you for watching. Why am I such a knob?